Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast explores the transition to net zero and the systems driving real change in how we move, live and power our world. Every week I sit down with the people leading that change, those offering insight, innovation and impact in many ways people don't fully see until they hear their stories. If you're ready for real conversations that inspire action and drive change, please like this video, subscribe to the channel and join us on this journey. And let's cut through the noise and build a better future together. Hi everyone and welcome back to another episode of Electric Evolution. I have with me Jamie Sands, who is the Head of Solutions at Welsh Group. Thank you, Jamie, for joining me. It's nice to see you on here.
Absolute pleasure.
So we didn't quite meet, but you were on a panel at Powered Up a few weeks ago, weren't you?
That's right.
Which was great. And then you kind of reached out to me on LinkedIn, which was always nice. But I'd seen you a lot in the sector, but we just never got to meet. So it's nice to actually chat to you now.
It's the LinkedIn effect, isn't it? Yeah.
It is the
I've seen you on LinkedIn,
effect.
and I'd like to meet you in person.
Yeah. It's funny though, but we were a bit like ships that passed in the night on different panels. So yeah, it's good to kind of get you on here and chat. Let's start off and do what I always do, which is kind of like just get a little bit of background about you, the kind of person you are, and what you've kind of done in the run up to your current job, and you know what fires you up on a daily basis.
Yeah, sure. So I worked in retail for most of my life. Got kind of disillusioned with that industry. Got made redundant. Wasn't completely confident that the company I was working for wasn't going to go the same way. So started looking for places where that skill set would apply. And I came up with two ideas. One was logistics. The other one was event management, which is kind of just logistics with people. Yeah. And I met my now boss, Chris Welsh. He sold me the dream of what he wanted to do with Welsh Group. And I got on board, so started at the ground level, operations, speaking to truck drivers, putting pallets on vehicles, you know, orchestrating that chaos.
Yeah.
And found I had a real knack for how the systems work and how those processes should run. So started making changes alongside Chris. After a couple of years of kind of learning the industry, understanding how that world worked, moved into a group position where I had kind of control over what technology we was using, making sure everyone was singing from the same hymn sheet, that the systems were doing what they should do. And then as decarbonisation came on our radar, that role transitioned into very much looking at how the company was going to tackle that. So electric trucks, chargers, solar panels, all that fun stuff. And then that turned into innovation in a broader sense. So the work we was doing on electrification gave us access to organisations like Connected Places Catapult and Innovate UK grants and things like that. So we found that we were an excellent testbed for startups and for new products and new solutions. So really lent into that, and it kind of gave us a bit of first mover advantage. It made the operation smoother. Logistics is all about marginal gains, so anything that you can put in place that's going to drive a bit of efficiency is really worth doing. So yeah, that kind of became my life. So yeah, I spend my time talking to cool new startups and playing with AI and looking at big electric trucks and energy and all sorts of cool stuff. It's a lot of fun.
So what's been the biggest the thing that's opened your eyes in the way that it has now? What was the biggest thing that did that in the kind of the move to electrification? When did you think, oh my God, this is the future? Because not everybody sees that yet, do they? When
No,
was
absolutely.
it? What was that pivot, that turning point?
It's the idea that for 100 years this industry has been beholden to big oil. Diesel costs what diesel costs. You can hedge it, you can bunker it, you can do things, but you can't significantly impact the cost of the fuel. But with energy, you can be smart. even just switching a tariff can dramatically reduce the amount you pay. And
Yes.
then you start looking at things like power purchase agreements and demand side response and, smart charging. When fuel is, on average, it's about a third of the cost base for a haulier. Like it's a absolutely ginormous part of our cost of business. Being able to control that for the first time, in my opinion, it's an absolute game changer.
But what's the mood of the sector of the transport industry right now when it comes to EVs and net zero, and because people hear those words, don't they? And like I say, no, it doesn't always switch people on because of the fact that they don't always know what it's about.
Yeah,
What,
and
what mood?
it's complex. So I
Mm,
understand the resistance. I mean, to sum it up, people are skeptical at
mm,
best a lot of the
mm,
times. Sometimes, downright hostile about it.
mm,
But it is shifting. People are coming on board. The tier ones tend to be, on the most part, playing. They've got the capacity to put a few trucks on the road and some chargers in. There are some exceptions. Companies like Kuhn and Nagel are doing incredible things. Wincanton are
mm.
doing really interesting things. Um, but actually, the progress we're seeing recently outside of that seems to be around companies like us. So tier two, family owned, independent, 50 to 200 trucks, because they've got a bit more agility. They can
Mhm.
change operations to fit in the needs of these new trucks, and that's one of the things I think you need to do.
So,
I
go on,
think
sorry.
we need to stop talking about sustainability and climate change in respects to this transition to electric vehicles, because it makes it feel like compliance, like just another thing that's being done to people, whereas actually I firmly believe it's a commercial opportunity, and that's what will get people to move.
So, okay, I totally get you about people feeling that they're if it, especially in the UK, we don't like to to feel that we're being forced to do something, do we? And to me, from a business improvement, which is my background, business improvement point of view, and I was just talking to a company about this yesterday, it's about bringing people along and engaging them and getting them to understand the why behind it and what the benefits are, because people don't like change, do they? And when it comes to change, it's kind of like, what, you're going to ask me to change what I've been doing for however long? Oh, but if you, I'm quite good at the old anecdotal evidence, do you know what I mean? And so when I talk about things, I try and get them to see it from a different perspective, and then just recognize that actually it might still be scary, but there are reasons behind, the why and the becauses, and and all of that kind of stuff. Are you feeling that? Are you guys able to actually provide that to other businesses to take away that level of skepticism?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I often find that if I can get in front of someone and have a decent talk about it, they tend to start to come on board.
Mm,
The problem lies is that there's 50,000 operating centres in the UK. Yeah, it's
yeah.
a very fragmented industry. That it's difficult. I can't go around them one at a time and convince them. So yeah, there's a big education piece that needs to happen, whether that's
Mm,
government or whether that's the trade bodies, and any work that we can do in kind of reducing the complexity, I think, is really really valuable,
mm. Uh,
because yeah, we're asking people to introduce like more chaos into that chaos, more variables, more thought processes into something that's, already, quite full on and stressful. So there's
mm,
no wonder they don't want to engage with it. They don't have the bandwidth. I think the thing that we've found is that the the digital systems, so the new solutions that are coming out to help you manage that complexity, even if it's not around electric, even just around your normal operation, if you can lean into them, then it solves a lot of those problems.
mm. Uh, I was gonna ask you, and you don't have to answer this if you're not if you don't know, or I'm asking you a question that you don't want to answer. But so what? would be, and this is how long a piece of string, isn't it? But what would be, on average, the cost of an EHGV versus a regular diesel truck? I mean, you don't need to say, the exact prices because wouldn't expect you to know it, but or be able to say it, share it. But what percentage differences are we looking
They're
at?
they're around double.
Are they?
So an
Okay.
electric HGV would cost you around £250,000.
Woo!
Lot of
Blimey.
money.
Right.
But over the lifetime, so
I was going to ask,
I mean,
yeah.
it's one of the big questions. We don't actually know for sure how long these new trucks are going to last. A diesel HGV might quite happily have a million miles on it after 10, 12
Mm,
years.
mm,
And then it gets passed on to a secondary market. It'll end up in Eastern Europe, it'll end up in Africa, and then actually no one knows how long they last.
mm,
You end up with a bit of a triggers broom situation where the engine's been changed and the cab's been changed, and is it even the same truck? Um, but the reduction in running costs should outweigh that in some cases, and it's getting better all the time. We talk in terms of total cost of ownership.
yes.
So no savvy operator just looks at the price of a truck and says, oh, yeah, that one's more expensive, so that's not the answer. We've always fully understood the idea of efficiency and MPG and maintenance costs and all those things that factor into that, insurance,
Mm.
all those things. The thing that I think a lot of people haven't fully understood yet is that the calculator needs to change. So with these new vehicles, you can't apply the same maths because you won't get the answer that you need.
Mm.
So when you're again looking at the energy piece, so like the access to energy markets and fully understanding the difference in maintenance costs and things like that all impact this new TCO, and it's really it's difficult to talk about because no one fully understands it yet because we've only had these vehicles for a few years. We can
Mm.
presume there's a lot of anecdotal saying yes, there's value in that truck after 10 years because the battery's still got 70%, so that has value. You can talk about residual values, but no one's really proved it yet.
Mm. So what's the thing? Because you were talking about, there's a lot of skepticism out there, and I'm assuming some of it is around that the life of the vehicle. Um,
You need
but
certainty. Yeah.
is it mostly that, or is it because it's just such a massive change for everybody in the sector?
Yeah, all of the above.
Mm,
I mean, it's a low margin industry, so if you're barely making any money anyway, being asked to take a bet on a new technology, being asked to change the way you work, you can see why people don't want to engage with it.
yeah, but I mean, so in the work that you do, and you said events before, are there events that you can go to and share, or have you? I'm sure you have shared about the potential return on investment. Because are we? So I know you're saying about the actual life of the vehicle is unknown at the moment because of the battery, etc., etc. But can you demonstrate the return on investment in sort of like in a short term kind of
Yeah,
looking at all of that?
yeah, and there's loads of work being done on this. So we're members of a few different projects that are doing some quite serious work on understanding that
Mm,
stuff. So the zero emission HGV infrastructure demonstrator has had
yes.
some grant funding to put trucks on the road, to put chargers in the ground. And at the same time, academic institutions and organisations like Ricardo are doing some, serious sort of data crunching
Mm,
to help understand those numbers. And there's papers coming out all the time about what that looks like. We're also members of JOLT, which is the Joint Operators Logistics Trial, which is Cambridge University and the Centre for Sustainable Road Freight. So lots of really, really smart academic people also doing similar exercises. So, all kinds of, SIM cards and little boxes attached to these trucks, collecting all that data, feeding it all back, so that data can be, turned into something that can really sort of prove these use cases and disseminated around the industry. I
and
think
what?
the problem you'll see after that is that a lot of these operators there, we've spoken about before is it's so hard to reach. So
Mm,
they're probably not going to the decarbonisation conference where these results are being presented. They're not
mm,
reading the report from Energy Systems Catapult. It's not their world.
no.
So how do you speak to a group of people that aren't listening? It's to me that's one of the core problems.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question then. How would you do that? Because if we look at you know how recently there is now a, and I'm trying to blooming think the name of it. There's a public information campaign, and I've seen a little bit of it, which about electric vehicles, but for the
Yeah, no,
general.
I contacted them, and actually, they all of the documentation they specifically only revert to electric vehicles. So I straight away put my hands up and say, well, trucks are electric vehicles. I know that you're talking about cars, but this is all part of it. And how do we include that in the same conversation?
It's funny,
Um,
as Michelle, who works for me, knows, I usually have a million tabs open in one go, and I'm looking at my laptop and trying to think of what it's called, and I can't find it for the life life in me. So I must have shut the tab down. But yeah, I mean, just getting that information out there is kind of really, like you say, it's difficult. It's more difficult, you trying to get to those people must be really hard unless you've kind of got a core team of people who've got funding to just go out to all of those organizations. But like you say, people aren't going to read those reports, and they
mhm.
might not be involved because it's not in their current, sort of,
Yeah.
the way
How,
that their
how
brain's thinking, is it?
how do you break outside of the bubble? Yeah. So the
Mm,
events that we all go to, yeah, they're really valuable, but you're preaching to the converted to a certain extent. Yeah, everyone's nodding along and saying, "Yeah, no, this is all really good," but they're not the people you need to convince. So, in my mind, a lot of it comes down to social media, and the leaders of these
mm.
companies they tend to be millennials now, digital natives. So podcasts, YouTube videos, even a
The
TikTok
tippity
that might
top.
go viral. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
is that probably a better way of reaching people? Um,
Mm,
and making sure that it comes from people that they relate to.
I
So,
agree.
operator to operator. I think
Yeah.
that will be the key.
It's funny. You just got me thinking. Somebody yesterday was showing me a TikTok video, and I don't really look at TikTok much, to be honest. But it was a TikTok video showing you how to get Microsoft Copilot to provide your, like, an executive summary of all your emails that come into your inbox, and that was on TikTok. And I just thought what I know it's different, but actually that is the kind of, those are the places, aren't they?
Yeah,
Because
and
people
like a
just,
million people might watch that video
yeah,
versus the 200 people in the conference room.
exactly. I suppose this is a big mindset shift, isn't it? Just trying to, like you say, tune in to the right people to provide that information. But are we looking at a bit of a challenge with that one? Because that's another
I mean,
shift, isn't
it's
it?
all a challenge. None of this is going to be easy, but yeah, marginal gains. Keep chipping away at
Mm.
it.
So where do you think? I know we've just talked about this for kind of like the operators themselves, but where do you think the conversation around the decarbonisation of commercial vehicles, as in EHGVs, for example, where's it misunderstood? But in is it still misunderstood by policymakers as well? Do you think?
I think so. Um, when we talk to government in its many and varied forms, you often find that the civil servants, the people on the ground level doing the work, seem to have a really really good understanding of what's happening and what needs to happen. But as it passes up that chain to ministers, that seems to be where it gets lost.
Mm,
And logistics it's not a sexy industry. It doesn't it doesn't get put at the forefront of these conversations. Partly because it's so cross-cutting. Yeah, nothing moves without logistics, they say. So
Necessary.
it touches everything, but then at the same time that causes it to often never be put in its own box and treated on its own. So, part of the worry is not that they don't understand the transition or don't understand what the policy levers should be, but that they don't even understand the industry or what we do and how it works. They've recently released a consultation into the HGV emissions framework.
Okay.
So the 2035 and the 2040 cut-off dates that are similar to the car and van world. That there's an end of sale date for diesel HGVs. How we categorise that, what mandates or frameworks we need to put in place to make that happen. And when you read it, it feels like it's almost missing the point. They talk a lot about vehicles, and I don't think vehicles are really the issue. It's around energy and getting grid connections into the depot and getting the price of electricity down to something that will make those TCO models work. The OEMs have done an incredible job bringing vehicles to market, and the improvements, even over the last few years, in range and payload and efficiency are just absolutely incredible. And will very soon be at the point where these vehicles can do anything that a diesel vehicle can do, as long as the charging infrastructure is there to support it.
Yeah. I was going to say, I mean, besides all the things we've just been talking about, charging is one of the it's a massive factor, isn't it? How are you seeing it develop at the moment? I know there's a number of different kind of pilots that have been happening. How's it kind of developing in your eyes?
Yeah, there's all sorts of cool stuff happening. So we're seeing the chargers getting faster and faster. So MCS chargers are now live in the UK. There's some in Scotland that are charging up to 1.2 megawatts, which is pretty fast, especially if you're thinking from a car perspective. But these trucks, they can have up to 700 kilowatt hour batteries. And when you're in an industry where uptime of these vehicles is everything, you can't have the truck sitting there for, in some cases, you can't have the truck sitting there for 2, 3, 4 hours charging.
No.
But at the same time, there's a lot of cases where that can happen. So not every truck is running 24 hours a day. Not every truck is sort of double, triple shifting. A lot of these vehicles are sitting in depots overnight. So you could use a 50 kilowatt hour charger and sit there and trickle charge it overnight. There's another interesting piece around how you align where infrastructure is and when charging happens to drivers' brakes. So drivers are mandated to have brakes after a certain amount of time for obvious reasons. Keep them safe. What you don't want is the driver running out of time a mile away from a charger, taking his brake, and then having to get to the charger and then take another brake till he charges up. So kind of aligning all those things is a big challenge. So people talk about like big infrastructure hubs and things like that, and they're great. But I think actually what I'd prefer is just like smaller locations, but all over the place. Yeah, more dots on the map, as I say.
I was going to say because have they changed the rule? On driver brakes where there was something about the fact that because is it a 45 minute break that they have to take, but charging wasn't involved in that break because of the wording of the brake being relating to diesel.
It was a funny grey area, and no one completely understood it. I think the important thing is that they don't. There's a line in there about being in charge of the vehicle. So as long as they can plug in and walk away and go to the toilet and have a shower and have some food or something like that, then it's a break. But if they have to stay there with the vehicle while it's plugged in, then it's not a break.
No, and like you say, you want to align it all, don't you? Really, so that actually it kind of it optimizes that time rather than taking it away and making it a difficult thing.
Yeah, and a lot of these rules were made when in a diesel world, so they sometimes don't make sense, and you have to be very careful when you're changing them that you're not going to cause another blocker further down the line because we've not yet understood the implications of it. And we've seen that already with regulations around sort of weights and payloads. So there's very strict rules on the weights that these vehicles can carry, both over the axles and the gross weight of the vehicle as well. And the government very kindly allowed us an extra 2 ton of weight on the vehicles if it was electric to compensate for the weight of the battery. But they didn't change the weight that could go over the axles, and actually in most cases that's the blocker. So whilst you can technically put more weight on these vehicles, in reality it doesn't make the slightest bit of difference. So now we're going to have to go back and revisit those rules and change them again, and hopefully not make a similar mistake that's going to come back and bite us in another 5 years' time when we've got a better understanding of things.
So excuse me if I'm sounding really naive, or maybe this is just a logical question. When these rules are being written, do they actually involve the sector as in the transport, the heavy goods vehicle sector, before it's all signed off?
They say they do.
Just technically,
they say they do. I'm sure
Okay.
there are meetings, and yeah, they put out the consultations and all that stuff. But how much weight that goes into their decision making, I know a lot of people feel that when they put out these consultations that the decision has already been made, and that they're almost paying lip service. So
Tick box.
it's difficult, yeah.
Yeah. It is hard when you think it's a tick box exercise, but again, are they thinking we're going to be damned if we do and we're damned if we don't, so we're going to do it anyway, just to get it out there, and even if we have to revisit in 5 years' time?
Yeah, maybe. I often think it comes down to the people that they're talking to as well. So if you only talk to the big 3PLs, who generally are kind of volume constrained instead of mass constrained, the stuff they're moving is lighter, so things like that don't impact them so much. But actually, they're the ones with a policy department. They're the ones that can send people to these sessions and these meetings because they've got the bandwidth for it. So whether they actually listen to the operators that it's going to affect more, the family-owned independent businesses that have been around for 100 years that sit below that, yeah, not so sure.
Just going back to kind of the charging scenario then as well. What do you think is the optimum? Because you kind of said you do want vehicles to be you want a driver to be able to stop in a 45-minute break and have and actually charge their vehicle, but also like I say, at the end of the day when it's in the depot, what about kind of, because I know that there are already transport companies that are putting in charging, and they're trying to do depot sharing or charging sharing, across. How is that working in your mind currently, or isn't there enough of it to actually be able to kind of say, yeah, it's working, no, it's not?
We've been sharing our charging infrastructure for 3 years now.
Okay.
So
How's it working?
as soon as that charger went in, we were sharing it.
Yeah.
And when there's not a lot of vehicles, not a lot of chargers, actually it's really easy to manage. Yeah, it's just a spreadsheet, if that, and emails and phone calls and WhatsApp groups. Some of the interesting stuff that's happening now is the rise of booking platforms and dynamic bookings, what that looks like. There's more maps coming out. Power have got a large vehicle filter on the map, which is fantastic. Companies like Flexible Power Systems are bringing in new booking systems. Loads of really, really exciting stuff happening in that space. We're members of the Transport Association, which is an organisation that's been around for 70 years that helps like independent family operators collaborate, and take advantage of that scale. It's quite an exclusive little club, but we offer each other parking, and we sell each other fuel, and we always have done. So that arrangement to me, will logically start to translate into the world of electric as more operators start to electrify their operation. And I think in our world, that's where the majority of charging will happen.
So if we kind of look at we talked data earlier, didn't we, and kind of putting financial models together to look at the total cost of ownership, but overall, if you look at it from a holistic point of view, what data is in place at the moment and what's missing, kind of from a transparency and reporting point of view, that will help. What do we need, data wise, to kind of fill in some of the gaps, to say this is this, that's that, and then you start getting this big picture of how things are working.
Yeah, operators have an enormous amount of data, mostly more than they've got any idea what to do with. So most companies use a telematics system.
Yeah.
And traditionally that's been used for, a dot on the map, where's my truck? As well as some kind of driver behaviour and compliance pieces. What's the MPG of the vehicle? Is he over throttling? Is he leaving the truck on idle? But there's a lot more in those data streams that we can use. And there's still a lot more that the OEMs could unlock for us as well, when they fully understand it. Things around battery health and state of charge and things like that maybe aren't quite as opaque at the moment. And we have planning and logistics data, where the truck's going, what are we doing the next day. There's asset management data, there's repair and maintenance data, there's all sorts. The problem is getting it all in the right place and joining it up. And there's some incredible work happening, but I think the challenge is, the fragmented nature of the industry, and this, I mentioned it before, there's all these different operators. So are you accounting for all those different use cases? Some of the best work at the moment, there's a research hub called Transit. A gentleman called Professor Phil Greening, who's just incredible, a professor of logistics but a data engineering background, and they're trying to build a digital twin of the UK logistics network. Okay. So really, really ambitious project. Looking at energy and truck routes, but not just trucks, sort of boats and planes, the whole kind of logistics system. And then they can run simulations on this model. So what if all the trucks were autonomous? What if we gave everyone bigger batteries and reduced the payload? What would that do? And the hub was developed, explicitly, I think, to answer these questions that everyone's got. But what they do need is more data. So same problem as before, very easy to engage with the big tier ones, but that's only one type of data. So what happens when you input all the data from like operators like us, and then going further down the chain, there's massive amount of companies that are just a guy with a couple of trucks, or they're a business that operates HGVs, but that's not their core business. I use an imaginary example of Benny's bed shops. The guy sells beds, but he's got a driver and an 18-tonner for delivering his beds. That's not his revenue. That's just his method of delivery. But he's got an O license. He's a HGV operator, and this is going to affect him. But he's not in any of those clubs. He doesn't need to engage with the trade associations. He's not a haulier. But all this stuff still affects him.
And so okay, if you're saying he's a member of a trade association, how are the trade associations communicating this stuff to Benny's Beds?
How punchy do I want to be here? How punchy do I want to be here?
I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, I think they could do better. I think they naturally just want to, I guess, amplify the voice of their members. So if you're a member of a trade body and you have a view, it's kind of their job to take your view into consideration. But going back to that education piece, your view might be maybe slightly outdated. Maybe you've not thought about it in the way that you could be thinking about it. So where do you draw the line between, raising, amplifying the voice of your members and maybe educating them and using it as an opportunity to lead?
It's funny. I've just written down nodding dog because you don't want your trade association really to be a nodding dog like Churchill going, oh yes, oh yes. Like you say, what is the point in having an association that just agrees with everybody?
Yeah, and
They
there's a really fine
actually,
line between kind of identifying barriers and actually putting some real work in trying to break them down.
mm,
I think there's still a lot of people out there that just thinks this will all go away and they don't have to worry about it. And that goes back to the policy base, isn't it? Being, even if this government drew a proper line in the sand and said, no, look, this is all definitely happening.
mm,
New
mm,
government comes in, they could just throw it all away, and yeah, we need a bit of certainty about what this all looks like to
I agree.
to
I
drive
agree.
investment and yeah, to get people to engage. Maybe even like force their hand a little bit. It's an unpopular opinion, but if say every operator that's got more than 100 trucks is forced, by legislation to transition a certain percentage of their trucks, I think it will do two things. It will make some operators realise that some of this is more possible than they thought it was,
Mm,
but it will also expose the edge cases, which do exist. Yeah,
yeah,
no one's saying they don't, but it would then make people sort of raise their hand and go, look, we're trying, but this isn't working for this reason,
mm.
so that people can set about trying to break those barriers down.
I mean, I don't know. Are there grants available for smaller hauliers or,
Yeah,
like you
there's stuff
say,
out there. There's some
big
interesting
companies?
stuff happening in Scotland at the moment where there's some money
Mm,
available to do feasibility studies, like
okay.
to do some analysis on your operation. The problem they're having is, and I can see it from the operator perspective, it almost sounds like a scam. Yeah, someone rings you up and saying, "Look, I've got 50 grand here. I can do some work on your depot. You don't have to pay anything. And you get this report. You're a grumpy Scottish planner, not wanting to give a put a cliche on it, yeah. Who's got a lot going on, yeah. Whose
Yeah, yeah.
truck's broken down and his customers shouting at him, and one of his operating teams called in sick. Yeah, he's not going to entertain that conversation. So, but
Oh,
yeah, and there's the plug-in truck grant, which has recently been enhanced.
mm,
Big chunk of money for getting some money off trucks, and we've taken full advantage of that. We've ordered another 3 trucks, but it doesn't necessarily help the operator that hasn't yet started on that journey.
no, no.
And they seems to be quite kind of sporadic and spiky at the moment. So you've got 3 months to take advantage of this. Then it's going to go away for a little while, and you're introducing these cliff edges. So
Yeah.
even someone like us, where we're invested in this transition and we want to move, of course we're going to wait and see what the next grant looks like. We're not going to buy any more trucks because we've just had a grant for the last lot.
Mm,
So that kind of long-term thinking, what does the next 5 years look like? Here's a set of incentives that are in place, and these are going to stay here, so it can help you on your journey.
mm, mm. As and
Unpopular
when
opinion,
that
but
point
I
is.
think we should stop giving people money off trucks. I think we should
Mm,
focus it all on infrastructure, because
mm.
if we get the infrastructure right, then the trucks pay for themselves in a lot of cases.
Right, following on from that, then my question, and we are going to talk about other areas of innovation. So how do we achieve what you've just literally said about the infrastructure? How do we get there? We've talked about power, we've talked about depot sharing. What really needs to happen to kind of just move this in the direction that you'd like it to be? And we'll talk
It's the
about
certainty.
transport
We've
in a
already
minute as
touched on
well.
it. I think it's the policy certainty.
Mm, mm,
So yeah, drawing that line in the sand, saying this is happening. This is how we're going to get there. This is the roadmap.
mm,
There's companies that are waiting to install charging infrastructure. So the like Aegis Energy, Fleet Group. There's more. The Mylances of the world.
mm,
They have
mm,
they have investment, and they are ready and waiting to build infrastructure.
mm,
What they need is more vehicles on the road to utilize that infrastructure. and the vehicles aren't coming on the road because there isn't the infrastructure. So there's the chicken and egg thing that might only be broken by some quite punchy policy decisions. I firmly believe that market forces will get us there eventually, but we've got a timeline. It's when it stops being purely a commercial thing and starts being about climate and environment, and that we've got deadlines. And if we want to hit those deadlines, then there needs to be some amount of intervention to hit those numbers.
Rather than mamby-pambying around kind of thing.
Yeah, and what does that look like? I mean, I almost don't feel qualified to talk about it sometimes. I have some views, but the consultation we mentioned a bit ago. Is it like do we mandate the operators? Do we mandate the OEMs to build more trucks, or do you make it more broad, kind of like around CO2? There's lots of different answers, and it's likely a combination of those things. But then you make it really complicated, and it becomes harder to implement, and government don't want anything that's going to be too difficult to implement. They want something simple and clear. And again, where do you draw that line?
That's a question. Well, we'll just see how it starts. See how it starts, kind of moving forward. Let's talk about something that you mentioned a few minutes ago, though, because you mentioned autonomous vehicles.
Yeah.
We had a little chat about this before we started recording, didn't we? About kind of, the things that excite you in the sector, and you brought up autonomous vehicles and innovation and all sorts of stuff. What is it about autonomous vehicles that you think, or do you think autonomous vehicles are on a time scale that's near, within the next few years, or do you think it's really long term, or how do you see it?
It will pan out similarly to how electrification has. There'll be certain routes that make sense quite quickly. There'll be certain operators that can move fast enough to take advantage of that quite quickly, but like electrification, the pathway is unclear as to what it gets to. I think it's going to be a very long time before there's an autonomous vehicle driving around the streets of Cambridge, for example, doing multi drop off a tail lift, single pallets to different shops and stuff like that. That's going to be quite tough. But a lot of vehicles are just driving backwards and forwards on motorways between big warehouses and pulling containers away from ports. And actually, the technology feels like it's there already. I'm super excited because, like we mentioned before, the fuel is about a third of our cost base. So understanding energy mitigates that and helps us be more profitable, more efficient. Another third of our cost base is drivers, and there's a massive driver shortage. Yeah. Nobody wants to be a driver.
No.
So no one's being put out of a job here. Yeah. And those easy to automate routes, those hub to hub, those short trunking routes, they're the ones that drivers don't really want to do. It's boring just driving backwards and forwards all day. They want to be out on the road. There's a lot to work out. There's some huge steps to take, but people are working on it. Yeah, and there's really cool stuff happening. There's a company called Einride. They're from Sweden. They've got a vehicle on the road in Belgium today that works. There's a company called Aurora in the States that are working with Volvo, I believe, and they're doing some pretty long haul trunking stuff, fully autonomous, and they live stream it, so you can go on their YouTube and you can watch it, and they have the camera from the front of the vehicle on one side, and they have the digital representation of what that truck can see on the other side. It's very, very, very cool. And I guess from a personal perspective, my boss likes that actually this could be commercially advantageous. Yeah, that it can make us a bit more money. I don't really care about that stuff. What really excites me about that is the level of system level orchestration you could then put on a logistics network. So you start looking at logistics as not thousands of different operators, but one big system. Over 30% of all miles run by a HGV are empty.
Good God. Okay.
So when you talk about efficiency, actually, it's really difficult. But that's because we're all these siloed different operators with our own customers. So building that efficiency difficult. When you zoom out far enough, you've got trucks going to you'll have two trucks both half empty going to the same place.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you can start to solve that stuff, that's really, really exciting. And the idea we spoke about how a lot of my trucks might come back to the depot at night so they can plug in overnight and charge. Well, actually, what if the truck could just poodle off next door and go work for someone else and then come back in the morning when I need it?
I was going to say, because like when you're talking about sea freight, for example, because I used to do export a long time ago, and we used to talk about tramp ships that would kind of go around and pick up different, and I'm sure, I know probably freight already does this, but, you pick up different containers from different ports and it all went to one destination or just different destinations. It just kind of feel like you just said there, coming back empty, and I get that, but it just, it feels like we're a bit A to B via C in some ways. Do you know what I mean? But how do you? There's a lot of things to think of here, aren't there? There are a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, huge amount to think about, and there's on the other side of that, there's a lot of really, really smart people working on this.
Yeah, including you.
I'm often accused of being like overly optimistic about some of this stuff. And I think the reason is because I'm surrounded by all the smart people that are doing it. So we're involved in the innovation trials. We're seeing those technologies before they hit the mass market. So that's why I'm optimistic, is because I can see the rate of change and I can see the solutions to a lot of these things that a lot of other people aren't seeing.
So tell me about 2040 then, because that is a new company, and I think this is a perfect segue to talk about it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's my new baby. So
yeah,
it was about a year ago now that we came up with this idea that the innovation that we're doing within Welsh Group could be done better, could be spun out into an independent organisation that does that sort of thing. That there's capacity to do more. So 2040 does four things. We offer support to other operators, and that can be as simple as a phone call, how you doing? Keep it up, great work. Or it could be a more formal kind of consultation process where we come in and we can do some assessments and point you in the right direction, Then there's this idea of like collaborative innovation. So we're already going to these meetings. We're already engaging with Innovate UK and the Catapult network. If we had more challenges, more data, then we could do more with the same amount of effort. So we've started collecting data from other operators. We've started collecting challenges from other operators, and trying to build a network of forward-thinking people who want to engage with this but just don't have the bandwidth.
Yeah.
So almost acting as a proxy for a little consortium of operators, and then we can use that data to engage with academia. We can use it to engage with policy, but we can also use it to engage with innovation. And when something rises to the top and it becomes useful, we can send it back down the chain and say, look, now we have this opportunity. Is this something you'd be interested in? But they can be as hands off as they need until something interesting comes out of it. And then alongside those kind of core bits of business, we have a YouTube channel and a podcast called The Loading Bay. So dissemination, education, like we talked about. Let's highlight all the cool stuff that's happening. Let's show the world how interesting this all is. And then we have 12 pillars. 12 pillars is our vehicle to engage with policy. The 12 pillars are the parts of the industry that need to collaborate better to make this transition work. So, energy operators, charging, advocacy, all those different parts of it. And we did a big event with that last year, a round table, like really kind of proving that this collaboration can happen in our industry, and got some incredible outputs. And we're doing some workshops over the next sort of 6 months to try and dig into the detail about, how we can help people more. But really, really exciting stuff going on.
And I was going to say, is it easier for you as an organisation linked to Welsh, or subsector of Welsh Group, to be able to approach other transport companies rather than, like you just said earlier on about, somebody ringing up with 50 grand's worth of grant funding and thinking it's a scam? Do you
Yeah,
know
I'm
what
going
I
to build
mean?
you a digital twin.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah, you're
sorry.
like, what? Oh, put the phone down. Oh, I've got another scammer on the phone. That kind of thing. They want my
Yeah,
bank
absolutely.
details.
They trust us. They listen to us. We're fourth generation, so we've been around for 92 years.
God, yeah.
So, and it's not necessarily me. It's my boss. It's like Chris, call up your mates. Let's get this moving. And yeah, no, everyone we've spoken to has been really really keen. And why wouldn't they? Because yeah, there's no risk from their side. Yeah.
And like you say, what you're doing is it's a good thing. It's innovation in itself because you're sharing with your own community, and hopefully you're more likely to feel, other operators are more likely to feel that they trust you because you are sharing, you're engaging, you're providing them with information that they might know a little bit about, or they might have just kind of gone, I really don't want to hear this earlier, but from you guys that's probably more credible, isn't it?
Yeah. Or they know where to come if they've got a question.
Mm.
So it could be as simple as that. They've decided they're going to buy a charger and there's 15 different charger manufacturers, or they're about to change their energy tariff and they're wondering, what do they need to think about if they're going to install the charger, what tariff might I want to be on? How do we? So we've already thought about that stuff. We've been thinking about it for years. So yeah, it's nice kind of our nose to share the wealth. Yeah.
So what would you define success to look like in the next 5 years? What would success for your sector, for all of the stuff that you're doing and you're sharing? What does success look like across the sector? What do you want it to be?
I just want to see, I guess, our part of the industry using technology better, using their data better, turning people from hauliers into solutions providers. Yeah, just being smarter about how you approach things.
And that is something achievable probably with a number of different organisations listening to what you're talking about, and then it's like anything, isn't it? Sharing that wealth of knowledge, as you share it and that information gets bigger and more people, you're bringing more people into that, then
Yeah, moving from being all these different siloed operations who have generally got the same problems and the same use cases. Yeah, there's differences, but there's a lot of similarity between them, and just being a bit more system level about it all.
And is there one final thought you want to leave everybody with?
I often talk about asking for help. Like there's so many people out there, and we're so early in this transition still that although there's plenty of solutions providers whose end goal is probably to try and sell you something, because we're so early in the process, they understand that that's probably not going to happen for a little while, and most of them are more than willing to just offer you a bit of advice or a bit of help. So yeah, whether it's a solutions provider or whether it's another operator like us, or whether it's just someone who's working in sort of media, or some of the the decarbonisation journalists, everyone wants the same thing, and they just really really want to help. So if you're unsure, you're confused, you're scared, whatever it is, just reach out. People are more than happy to help.
Thank you, Jamie. It's been lovely to talk to you, and actually to kind of get to know you a little bit, and actually find out about all the brilliant work you've been doing and you are doing, and and education. So I'll share all your links in the show notes, and just
Wonderful.
say thank you for joining me and taking time out.
No, thank you, Liz. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Bless you. And to all of you watching and listening, I'm just going to say, do all the wonderful things I always ask you: like, subscribe, and share. Share this story. I think it's really worth it. Have a look at the show notes. Have a look at Jamie's links. Check him out on LinkedIn. And on that note, I'm going to say thanks to Jamie. Thanks to you all for watching and listening. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Bye. Thanks for watching Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you're a charge point operator, local authority or stakeholder in EV charging, I'd love to talk to you about our Charge Point Evolution framework. It's designed to help you create a seamless EV driver journey, boost utilisation and maximise your return on investment. Alternatively, if you know someone who'd be a great podcast guest or might be interested in sponsoring an episode, you can email me on liz@fullcircleci.co.uk. Thanks again for watching.